So if you are someone who is requesting multiple capital projects and you are not sure whether or not they would qualify as separate procurements, please reach out and we are happy to help you with that determination. So another important note on vehicles. So many of you are aware of the massive vehicle shortage that we are currently experiencing due to labor and parts shortages, as well as, vehicle manufacturing plants being down and things like that. So ODOT has over 100 vehicles that we've awarded in past cycles that have still not been delivered. So, I mean, that speaks to just on our end, kind of the backlog we are seeing. And so we are still allowing people to apply for vehicles through this cycle because we understand that it will be important to still get people in the queue, so to speak, for their vehicle orders. But the reality is that vehicles awarded through this cycle are probably still 1.5 to 2 years out from being delivered to your site. So that is a really important consideration to make. So when we are looking at projects through this application cycle, we are considering projects that can actually be started and completed in program year 2023. That does not mean that vehicles will not be funded. They will be funded, but any good project that will be completed this program year will be considered first. Additionally, we will not be dedicating any state funding towards vehicles because the vehicle prices are completely unpredictable right now. We are getting price increase requests from vendors, every 4 to 6 weeks. They're coming back, saying vehicle prices are going up, vehicle prices are going up. We only have so much state funding. 2.5 million is all we have. We cannot increase awards. So the likelihood of what we award you through this application round being what the vehicle actually costs once it's being built and delivered is very, very slim. And because of that, because we get the state funding locked in and we don't have a guarantee of additional state funding to dedicate towards that project once it's actually being delivered, we are basically saying we are not going to be using any state funding towards the vehicles because it's just too unpredictable for the funds. The other important thing that I want to note is if you are someone applying for replacement vehicles, please consider your prior replacement vehicle requests that were approved and not yet delivered. I think because vehicles are not right now on your site, it's kind of easy to forget that you do have pending replacement vehicles that have been awarded and maybe not delivered. And so if you included a vehicle in your fleet that was eligible for replacement in a prior application, do not include that vehicle again to justify another vehicle. So to further explain, if in last year's application, vehicle 18 in your fleet needed replaced, so you said, I need a replacement vehicle, I will be replacing vehicle number 18, here's all the information. We said, looks good, we'll award you this vehicle, it's currently pending. You still have vehicle 18 in your fleet and now it's even older, you really need it replaced. It might be easy to forget that that vehicle's already kind of been replaced on paper. So don't go into this application and duplicate that request by putting vehicle 18 again, if that makes sense. So just be conscious of that and where you stand with what vehicles already have pending replacements, because this is kind of a unique experience in cycles in the past where people are still kind of in limbo with their vehicle awards. So I am going to go through some of the information that we're requesting by project and what we're looking for with that information. So for each unique project that you submit in your application, we are going to be asking you what the goals are for that project. These goals will be predetermined goals by ODOT, and essentially what they are is the unique goals for each one of our funding programs. So what we're attempting to do through asking this information is to understand if this project meets multiple program goals, because if it meets multiple program goals, then it has multiple avenues for eligibility. So this is one way that we can qualify you for more than one funding source. So when you are going through your application, if more than one goal applies to your project, please indicate that by checking all that apply. However, you can't cheat the system and just check them all just to maximize your funding, because once you check a goal, you will be asked to provide a narrative of how your project addresses that goal. So you will have to actually be able to associate your project to the goal through a narrative. We also ask about the population served. So this is segments of the population like seniors and individuals with disabilities, low income, general public, things like that, because again, this goes back to maximizing your eligibility. So if your project is serving seniors and individuals with disabilities, that's great. But if it's also serving low income, then we might be able to consider you under other sources. So again, check all that apply for that project so that we can consider as many sources as possible. We are also going to ask you for each project what your priority is. So this is really important for us on our end to make sure that we are really addressing your crucial needs at a local level. So if you're applying for 10 projects, we know which ones are your absolute highest priority, so that if funding becomes limited, we do everything we can to address your highest priorities first. So the priorities do need to be unique. You can't have multiple number ones. Everything's our number one priority. The application will not allow you to do that. The field is unique. So if you put one in one field and one in another field, when you go to submit it, you'll get an error that that field must be unique. So I would go ahead and start thinking about that now in terms of, how am I going to prioritize these projects when it comes down to it. And that goes for your vehicles as well. So this is project by project, meaning if you're requesting 6 vehicles, you have to prioritize each vehicle. It's not just, well, my vehicles are priority 5. You have to pick and choose between each vehicle what the priority is going to be, because if you're like, hey, if I can get 2 MMVs, that's great, and then I would say dispatching software and then maybe a third MMV, so that gives you the flexibility to really kind of determine how ODOT should kind of move through your requests and consider what is going to give you the most positive impact locally. Your project description. So in the past, these have been quite long narratives that you have given, but since we are already addressing a lot of information about your project in terms of what goals it is addressing, the population served, and so on and so forth, all we are looking for in your project description is a brief description. So, you would say a modified minivan, as an example, or 2 monitors, if you're seeking computer hardware. So this is brief. Project start and end date. This applies primarily to capital purchases that you will be procuring. We are looking at, when do you intend to start this project and when do you intend to have the procurement complete? So this helps us on our end when we are considering capital projects. If a project can be done in 3 months, that, might bode well or better than a project that would take 18 months, because that means ODOT is going to have funds unexpended for quite a long time for that project. So those dates are important for that. purpose. And, whatever dates you put in there, while they are estimates at this point, we do expect it to be close. And we will be following up with you in program year 2023. If you say, hey, I'm going to have this project started in January and done by March, your program coordinator will be reaching out to you after March if you haven't submitted an invoice saying, hey, where are you with this? So we do follow these dates and we do check in on these dates. So try to be as accurate as possible when you are considering that. Local match sources. So this is not project by project, rather it's by project type. So what do I mean by that? If you are requesting vehicles, there will be a vehicle information section where we will ask you how many vehicles are you requesting, and then we'll ask you about the local match funds that you are dedicating towards your vehicle projects. So you will summarize all of the match sources for all of the vehicle requests. So we will ask you, what is the match source and what is the amount that source is contributing? So if you're like, well, we have agency funds and they're contributing $7,000 towards the purchase of our vehicles, it would be for your vehicle requests as a whole and not individually. If that makes sense. And this is really important because, if you're going to ultimately be funded with federal funds, we have to make sure that the match sources are eligible to match the federal funds. So as detailed as you can be, the better. It sets you up to be successful, it sets us up to be successful. So funding needed. So this was a really confusing portion of the LOI. We had initially had it split out between federal and state and local, but since you guys are no longer really concerned about the program type or the funding type, we have removed the distinction between federal and state, and we will just simply be asking you to note how much ODOT assistance you require to complete the project. So let's say that your project is $100,000 and you only have $10,000 locally to contribute towards the project. That means you need ODOT to contribute $90,000 of the total project cost. So in your ODOT assistance field for your project, you would put 90,000 for ODOT, 10,000 for local, and then it would automatically calculate the total project cost as $100,000. And what that means to us is, okay, so, under a federal program, we can only contribute 80,000 because of our matching ratio requirements. So that means that we need to provide state funding for the other 10,000 and provide a soft match, or we need to do, transportation development credits. It just gives us an idea of how we need to consider our funding across the board to help you make this project happen. If you need 100%, you have no local money for the project, but you're making a project request, you would put all the project cost in the ODOT assistance field. And then the total project cost would obviously represent that you're requesting ODOT provide 100% of the project cost. So that's how we are going to approach those requests in order for us to understand at the end of the day what you can bring to the table locally and what you need us to contribute. But on that topic, you will be asked about the scalability of your project. So this is for each unique project. We're going to ask you, is this project scalable? And that means, can this project happen with less funding? If you say, yes, this project can be completed with less funding from ODOT, we would then ask you, what is the minimum amount required to complete this project? And then we will ask you how your scope would be adjusted if the project was scaled down. So, on the top, in this prior example of you have a project that is $100,000, you're requesting 90,000 from ODOT, but you're like, well, we could have as little as $60,000. We just would reduce the number of tablets we're requesting or purchasing, or whatever it may be. That's kind of the information that we're going to be requesting. And if you say a project is not scalable, it doesn't mean that it doesn't negatively impact your application. But if a project is scalable, it just allows ODOT more flexibility when considering projects against the total amount of funding that we have.